and go over these Olympics. And really, this is like a pretty big deal with the Olympics. So remember how I said Australia had the best chances of beating Greece simply because Greece was like really in the lower seed of their standings? Well, I was completely wrong. Greece ended up beating the Australian team 77-71, and with this win, that would mean that the Australian team now has the same record as the Greek national team. So this would mean that Greece essentially gets to stay alive for a little bit longer, but they have to wait to see the results of the game that's going on right now, Canada and Spain, to determine who advances. Because I found out that it's not just the top two teams that end up advancing. It is the top three teams that are in every single group. So number one and two in group A, B, and C, they have a guarantee of qualifying. But then the rest of the two spots are going to be reserved for the best three-seeded team. So depending on how this, or the best, teams overall that are left in the group standings. So depending on how the point differential works and depending on who wins in these games upcoming will determine who gets in what spot and where each team would be able to place and qualify. So, for example, like another game that recently happened, Brazil destroyed Japan in the Group B matchup, and they won 102-84. Because of this win, Brazil has given themselves a chance to actually qualify for the tournament, because they are the third seed by a long shot because of this point differential. And on top of that, Germany and France in the group, they've already qualified. So because they've already qualified, they're just like, there's no competition really. And these guys were able, these guys were able to make quick work of Japan. Brazil was able to make quick work of Japan. And they were able to solidify, and they were able to punch in a spot in this tournament because it's down to the top three teams, the best three seed from each group, as opposed to just the top two players. It's a little bit confusing. I will admit, I was a little bit confused when I figured this out as well. There is an article that was explaining it though. Like, a comfortable victory in Lille meant that Brazil finished third in Group B with a 1-2 record and a -7 point differential. So that's their point differential now. The win, it doesn't immediately grant Brazil a quarterfinal spot, but the result of the following game between Greece and Australia that we talked about helped them solidify their spot in these games. So in their first, this is the first ever Olympic victory for Greece, by the way, in 2024. This is the first time. So, actually, wait, I think this is the first time that they've even qualified in the longest time. So this is their first time in a while that they've actually won a game. And so because they were able to beat Australia, now they also have the same record as Australia. The only difference is really, their point differential, because Australia now has let me just go ahead and bring up the point differentials now. These are the point differentials as they're standing right now. So Australia, they're still up on top because of the point differential, but Spain could clear a way up, right? Depending on how much Spain loses by, they could either do one of two things. If Spain wins, then they will claim that second seed, and then and then Greece is going to be done. Or they could lose, which is what they're doing right now, and their point differential continues to drop. And because their point differential continues to drop, and depending on how much they lose by, which cannot be more than 3, they will fall all the way down to the bottom seed, and therefore allowing Greece a spot in the tournament. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? Are you guys picking up what I'm putting down? Because I felt like I explained that pretty well, but I'll try it again. So Australia, they're second right now. Spain can move up to second if they win. Spain can also move down a little bit more in these standings when they lose. And obviously, they don't want to lose because then they will lose their spot. Like, this is sort of how it works. And also, it should be noted that between the other few teams that are in the running for, the best overall, or that are in the running for the tournament, it's going to be between all of the teams and which teams are the best ones, which ones have the best record, and which ones have the best point differential. So if South Sudan in this next game against Serbia has a lower point differential, then it could be possible that, depending on how the standings go, that South Sudan won't be in the standings. Like, it could be. Actually, wait, no, that's not possible. I lied. Scratch that. It's very confusing, as I said before. Like, these standings and the way that it's structured and just keeping up with all of them is incredibly confusing. But what isn't confusing is raw stats. And if we are going to talk about raw stats, Giannis dominated the day, without a doubt, against the Australian team. Ended with 20 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists. Coincidentally, this was the fewest points that Giannis scored in the entirety of the Olympics, and it's a surprise that they were able to win this one. Now, for some reason, I don't understand why they're doing this, but Greece is ranked higher than Australia in these standings. I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense because Australia has a better point differential than Greece, so I don't understand why the standings are grouped like that on the website, but I digress. I mean, maybe it's a mistake, maybe the person that's running the website just is incompetent, however you want to put it. It doesn't make any sense to me how and what's crazier is that Greece is the only team that has a lower point differential where, it genuinely, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I don't understand why they have such a bad, why they have a worse point differential, but they're ranked higher. It doesn't make any sense. I'm incredibly confused by that, and I have no idea what's going into the placements and what's going into the rankings, but for some reason, Greece, despite that minus point differential over Australia, is still ranked higher than Australia. It doesn't make any sense. It genuinely doesn't. Now, maybe it's because they ended up winning in the end, they ended up beating Australia, but I don't see how that could warrant them moving all the way up to the second spot. I just don't understand. That's according to FIBA.basketball, so the official website for FIBA basketball. I don't know if they messed that up or if that's just how it works for some reason. I have no idea why that's the way that it is. But yeah, it's just confusing. Again, this entire thing is just a little bit disorganized in my opinion and very, very, very confusing. So that's why, in the fourth segment it's going to be a little bit difficult determining just how these standings are, just how these standings work. And how, this team, I guess you could say, this tournament actually functions. It's very confusing, but I digress. Now, a little bit of an update on the Canada and Spanish game. Canada is up by 80 right now, and Spain is... Actually, no, they're not. Whoa. They're up 80-73. That's what I wanted to say. Excuse me. So that means they're up by 7 points. So if this plays out, if they lose by 7, then Spain is most likely going to get eliminated from the Group A standings because their plus-minus would be way below Greece's point differential right now. And that's something that, they absolutely cannot afford. So, but if they win, however, then they would be able to move up into the second spot of the standings because they would be 2-2, compared to, they would be 2-1 compared to the rest of the teams that are 1-2 in the Group A standings. And, that's just, food for thought. Now, for Brazil and going against Japan, Like, the reason why they were able to actually qualify is because now they have, amongst all of the people in the third seed right now, they have the best potential to end up getting the best point differential. So if that makes sense. So essentially, their point differential is -7 right now. Greece, if the way that things play out, they turn out to still remain in the third spot, they would have a point differential of -8, which is less than Brazil's just by one. Like, literally less than Brazil's by just one. And for Group C, the South Sudan has a point differential of -6. Now, depending on how the game goes between Serbia and South Sudan is going to depend on, it will influence who gets the third spot, if that makes any sense to you guys. But this is why this game was sort of like, why it wasn't important before, but now it's important, because Brazil actually, with the results of the Australia and Greece game, they were actually, fighting for a spot. Well, they did it in vain, I should say, because, Brazil kind of wiped the floor with Japan, but the Brazil game happened before the Australia against Greece game, so they were just fighting for their country at that point, and they were competing for their country at that point. And the fact that they actually were able to, win in the end, and this gave them a good chance of qualifying, is impressive. Like, I think that's just like, it's a little bit lucky. You could argue that it's luck, but at the same time, it's just very, very impressive to think about. Because, like, if I was them, like, if I was their coach, I would have, actually, you know what? I would have thought that the game was rather meaningless, because I would have assumed that Australia was going to beat Greece. But it goes to show you that, like, anything can happen in sports, and that anything can happen in these games. So that's really, like, all that I wanted to talk about, because, like, while this game the game wasn't really that competitive. Like, Brazil against Japan, it wasn't even close. It was never close. From the jump, it wasn't close, to the final quarter, it wasn't close. And Japan, along with Puerto Rico, are arguably the two weakest teams in the entirety of the Olympics, like, of the Olympic Games. Also, should be noted, Leo Mendil, you remember the guy that was ranked number 1 in the MVP poll that I was talking about, wasn't even the team's leading scorer. It was someone named Bruno Caboclo, who ended up getting 33 points in the game against Japan. Like, he was lighting them up. And again, like, for the Australian side, there wasn't really many, I guess you could say, outstanding players that, stood out in this matchup. And like, at least on the Australian side, obviously, with the Greece side, you had Giannis Antetokounmpo, but it was just one of those games where Australia just couldn't really hit a shot from three. They were very piss poor shooting from three, compared to, the Greece team wasn't that much better at shooting from three, but, because they had Giannis, and because they were able to shoot a lot better from the field, like, from the field as a whole, it propelled them to eventually win the game in the end. Like, this was just, a bit of an unfortunate game for, if you're Australia, because it's like, you kind of needed this win. Otherwise, because now your fate sort of hinges on not only this game that's going on right now. By the way, it's 82-79 with 53 seconds left, and Spain is at the free throw line. So very, very critical game going on right now. But Australia, they had the chance to qualify and do it themselves, but now they have to rely on other teams and other players, which is something that you really don't like. And Spain just missed a free throw, and now Canada has the ball up by 2 with 46 seconds left. So I'll be right back after this short break as I go over who has the best chances of winning Rookie of the Year. And I'll let you know that RJ Barrett just hit a three-pointer to increase the lead to 85-80. So it's getting really, really close in this final game. And It's not looking good for Spain, but I'll go ahead and I'll update. I'll give an update exactly right after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned for the next segment where I talk about the best chances of winning Rookie of the Year. Stay tuned.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some loose shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the